So I don't know why. It's just something I noticed.
Because
Does that mean
it's fake? Because it's fake. Yeah.
It's not because it's fake. It's because no. I was like looking. I looked at the Afan Naim, and he didn't have any parallels.
Right.
I mean, it's also hard, right? Because there's no Yerushalmi on Chulin, but it wasn't in the Midrashic stuff either, so that I could find.
And maybe it's a Babylonian. To wait after milk, to wait after meat you're saying is a Babylonian. What is it? OCD something.
It's a tradition of Bavel that maybe the Tosfot there are. I mean, we'll see. This is all going to pivot on how we read Mar Ukva, right? Like, what is he talking about? The Tosfot.
So can I start going Minhag Makom and?
I think you're too late. You're adapted.
I live in there. Yeah, it's a good point.
Well, this is another. Actually, another thing I wanted to say to everybody at one point, which is that halacha, as I see it, is there's a tradition of halacha. There's a sort of a precedent, a historical development, and you can't really just go back and say, well, if it was good enough for Beit Hillel, then it's good enough for me, or if it's good enough for a particular Rav Yossi Aglili, who would eat chicken and milk. So hey, that's an opinion. So I can go. The halacha has developed and is part of the Jewish history, and in that way, Tevye is ultimately right. What we do with things is because it's a tradition. Ultimately, you can't just say, well, there was one rabbi somewhere along the line of halacha development who said some opinion, and therefore I'm going to do that. I mean, you could, but you wouldn't be really following the Jewish tradition. That's what I would say.
So I'll add to that for a second if I can, if with all humility, is like an interesting topic that I found in terms of lechumra of like trying to go back to an earlier opinion is the Shvitat Kelim question on Shabbat, where Beit Shammai rule that you have to, you can't let your Kelim do work, and Beit Hillel generally rule that you can. But even though we possibly Beit Hillel, everyone seems to, for a long time in the medieval period, tries to go back to Beit Shammai, and like how they try to do it is very interesting to watch them. But
that's interesting. Well, you can always,
But anyway, with that,
you can always be more machmir if you want.
Machmir, yeah. So. With that, I want to open it up. Hi, everybody. So I thought we'd start tonight. Rav Lanis, I think, hates when I do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to just like what in terms of, I think almost any, observant Jew knows that there's between you eating meat to milk and maybe even the other way, there's a wait time, right? You don't just clear the table. Well, maybe you do. We'll see the Tosfot, right? But and so the question is why? Like, what factor is playing out there? What are we concerned with? We're going to see some of this in the Gemara, of course, but like, what's going on? Why do we have a wait time? We just saw in Pechet they can't come on the table together, right? We know that Derech Bishul Asra Torah. So what's the problem? Wow.
I think there's.
Go for it.
No, I say that I think there are several opinions about that. So anything you say will be right.
Yeah.
Basar Bein Eshinayim is the Rambam, I believe.
Great. Right. He gets that from the Gemara itself, right? That and which we get, from the story of the Slav. You have meat stuck between your teeth. Okay, that's one thought there.
You still have the taste of the tom in your mouth, which is Rashi. If you want to quote Rambam, I'll quote you Rashi. Right.
Great. I love it. Right. And I remember Rachel said to me once, I don't remember what she ate. It was some sort of cheese. It must have been because it was going the other way, which we'll see, at the end in the Ramah. Right. She said, and it must have been some sort of, hard aged cheese, let's say. And she was like, it was a few hours later, I can still taste it. I mean, there's like no way, right, that it's, the tom of cheese is still there. Okay, good. Is that a problem, right? I don't know, the tom of cheese in your mouth, is that a problem mixing that with meat?
I mean, in theory, if it's only Derech Bishul that's aser, then it shouldn't be, but also, it doesn't feel good.
Good.
You could make a case for Hana'ah.
Good. Or maybe there's hana'ah from it. Yeah, but still not. It's hana'ah from something that was mevushal potentially. But maybe there is. I don't know. Maybe there's cooking that goes on in your mouth or your stomach. I wouldn't. I
Well,
don't
the
think
Gemara
that's so
says that if you want to eat milk and meat, you should eat kachal.
Yeah. Good.
In other words, that the idea of mixing it in a mutter way is permitted.
Hmm. So, but all right. Any other thoughts before we dive into this? We'll look at the Gemara and
Well,
maybe
is there another opinion about like in the stomach that the juices come up from the stomach?
it seems that some of the things, ideas of like the shuman that are, moshchim and that they continue seem to me not only the mouth, but some of them seem to be the stomach that I saw. But so, but I think, I will add, I didn't put the Zohar on here, but the Zohar, if anyone's ever seen the Zohar on Basar B'chalav, it's actually, I think, incredibly important in our halachic history, where the Zohar sees Basar as din and Chalav as Rachamim, and that those two things can't be mixed. And I think it definitely the Zohar, but even before the Zohar, there is this idea that even though Derech Bishul Asrat Torah, that Basar B'chalav is something, maybe it's, Torah from Moshe Sinai, wherever it is that there's something more to Basar B'chalav than just you can't cook them together. Like maybe Karadin, yeah, but also like part of being a Jew is separating these things completely. And that could be a time separation as well. I don't have it stronger than that at the moment, but I really do think that there's something deeper and much older to it than just don't cook milk and meat together. So that we've inherited.
Are you going to show us that Zohar?
I'm not actually. I didn't put it in this. Maybe I'll put in a addendum after this.
There's a halachic learning from that Zohar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, it's going the other way too, from Gavinat to Basar, right? Comes from that.
Right,
Zohar.
that you have to bench after it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which means you have to bench.
Yeah. And that Zohar is very interesting. And also I think it's interesting in terms of one of the things that I know I hear a lot from people is, well, what's the issue? And the Rambam tries to solve this. What's the issue with Basar B'chalav? Like what's going on there? And there it gives, it tries to give an idea, which I think is really interesting, of Rachamim and Din together. But more to say about that in a non-halacha shir. So I think. But all right. So with that, I want to start with the Gemara and Hulin. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with everybody. Everyone has the document too. But here we go. All right. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for people. And we'll spend the first half on the early sources, and then I think we're going to go to the Shulchan Aruch and Nosei Kelim for the second half of the show today. So we'll see how we do. All right. So let's. Who's going to read for us first? Noam, you want to be our first reader?
Certainly. Let me just open it up in my Gemara. That'll be easier for me to follow. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Chulin Kuf Dalid Amud Bet, and it's towards the bottom of the Amud. So.
Yep. All right. Tana Agra Chamua de Rabbi Abba, Of Ugvina Nechalin Bapikorin. So it was taught, Agra, the father-in-law of Rabbi Chia, taught that that they can be eaten apikorin, which I like. What do you want me to do with that? Freely,
leave it
fine.
For the moment.
All right. Hu tane la v'hu amar la below nitila yadayim uvelo kinu achapes. So he taught it. This is teaching about the ofen the gvina bapikorin, and then he explained it, or he taught about it, that you can do so without washing your hands and without kinuach, the wiping of the mouth.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, just stop there. I want to just that. I want to unpack a little bit. So what's going on? What are the factors at play here? Doesn't have to be you, Noam. It could be anybody. If I want to eat.
So first.
Yeah, go for it.
First of all, there's a recognition that we're dealing with oath here, right? Which definitely has to be a factor, which means there seems to be some room for leniency, perhaps. And then there's this this Tanaic teaching that uses the word bapikorin, but nobody really knows what it means. So I think he sees the word perhaps hefker in there and is like, all right, what does that mean? Freely? It means you don't have to do any like pre-prep before you transition your type of meal.
Great, right? So it's and what order are we talking about here? Even though order hasn't really come up.
Seemingly, you're doing oaf before gvina.
Potentially, right? It's not so clear if of ugvina means of then gvina, right? Or right, this is one of the Tosfot's problems that we're going to see. We may see. I don't know if we'll have time, but so good. It's of. So of ugvina we know is derabanan. It's not deraita. It seems to be that you can eat them. It's not so clear the order. Maybe it's of then gvina without netilat yadayim or kino chape, which means, by the way, basar ugvina. What would be the rule then? Probably.
You need quinoa and
at least netilat yadayim and kino chape.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That it sounds like basar. Now, do you need more? We don't know, but you need potentially at least that. You would think. All right. Order not clear, but you need to
Why did you
wash
say
your
the,
hands.
I mean, what leads you to say the order is not clear?
Well, ovugvina could mean both, right? It could mean either direction.
But you have the story.
Yeah, but so I mean, so far before we have the
Okay.
Yeah, it's this statement, it's not clear.
yeah. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean with the story, but now we'll do the story. So go for it.
Okay. Okay. Rav Yitzchak read Rav Misharshia equal leve Rav Ashi. Aitule gvina achal autule bisra achal below masayade. Amre la v'hatane agra chamuha derabi abba ofu gvina nechalim bapikoran ofu gvina in basar gvina lo amarhu hane mili belalia avabiyamama hachazina. So. Okay, so Rav Yitzchak read Rav Misharshia visited Rav Ashi, and they brought before him cheese. He ate it, and then they brought before him meat. He ate it, and no one objected to it. So they said to him, "Wait, but didn't Agra teach that oath and gvina, when you eat that, you can eat them when oath and gvina, you can eat them ba'apikorin? Oath and gvina, yes, that procedure works. Basar gvina, no, that procedure doesn't work." So he responded that when you need to do the apikorin, well, when you can't do apikorin is only at night, but in the day you can see.
Great. Okay. So a couple of things here, right? They're doing a close reading of the statement of Agra's, right? That says, yeah, it's only ofu gvina you can eat bapikorin, just like you said, Noam, but not basar gvina. And so they said to him, well, why didn't you wash your hands? And he said, I looked at my hands, they were clean, essentially, right? That if it was the daytime where you have, I don't know if this can extend to good light, but let's say it's the daytime. I looked, there's no basar. Okay. But what's the concern then that might happen if you didn't wash your hands?
Maybe
It's because
sometimes
there's no
fatty
gvina,
things.
right?
Yeah, so Yavni, was that also you who jumped into?
Oh, I just said that you said, oh, I looked at it and there's no basar, but actually relevant to the story is I looked at my hands and there's no gvina, so it's okay.
Exactly.
I can eat the basar.
Yeah. So, okay, good. So that's part one of this Gemara, which sounds like basar gvina. You need to, excuse me, or gvina basar, really, right? It potentially you need to check your hands, and if there's something on your hands, you need to wash them. Or if you can't check your hands, you just wash them anyway, right? That's so. Not so clear, by the way, from this what he did with quinoa chapeh. Like, did he also because the Gemara just says velo mashe yadeh, right? It doesn't say anything about did he eat something else in between? Did he wash out his mouth some way? So,
Josh, what seems strange with the story to me, though, it seems if just by connecting this cheese followed by meat, connecting it to the oaf and cheese either together or one right after the other, it's almost as though he's saying that the whole issue even of basar and challah is if there's something on your hands. The whole deal right is just if it's on your hands, because otherwise the question would be ma kesher. The first was about oaf, which is derabanan. This is basar, ma kesher bichlal.
Yeah. So basar oaf doesn't require that. Basar does, right? The fact that he makes the statement about oaf means that basar needs it. Is
right, but the fact that he's making it about oaf when they're asking him about why he ate meat and cheese, it's like,
yeah. Well, the reason because they're being meduyak about how they read the statement, right? They're saying he made this statement only about oaf, right? He didn't say right basar gvina. He said oaf gvina, And so therefore it must be that basar requires, you can't eat ba'apikoran, whatever that is. And so that sounds like you have to do netilat yadayim and potentially kinuach hapeh as well in order to do that. All right. And we only hear this in the story. We only hear about his hands. We don't hear anything about like, what did he do with his mouth? Did he wash it out in between somehow? So
maybe it's a machloket.
Good.
Maybe this second part of the Gemara is saying you don't need to wash, and the first part is saying you do.
Yeah, it could be. So that's and this is all we get in this part too, right? Is and we're going to get more from Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel about kinuach hapeh and medichat hapeh. But so maybe we'll do that. Let's keep going down. Who do I have next? Asher, you want to pick up at Tanya Beit Shammai Omrim Mekanech, Beit Hillel Omrim Madiach.
Okay, Tanya Beit Shammai Omrim Mekanech, Beit Hillel Omrim Madiach. My Mekanech or my Madiach. So we have a bright that says Beit Shammai said that between meat and milk you just have to wipe your mouth, and Beit Hillel says that you've got to rinse it out. So they're asking, what's the difference between wiping and rinsing?
Great.
Elameh, Beit Shammai omrim mekanech velo bay madiach, uBeit Hillel omrim madiach velo bay mekanech. If you're saying the Beit Shammai says you do kinuach without madiach, and Beit Hillel saying you do adacha without kinuach.
Yeah, or I'd say, but you don't require the opposite, right? You require the one that they said, but not the other.
Right. So the basis, it's raising the question: are you saying that Beit Shammai says you do one? Are they each saying you do one without the other?
Exactly. So
okay. Ela haidamar Rav Zera ein kinuach pe'ela befat kiman kiveit Shammai. But Rav Zera says no. Wiping the mouth is only something. It's done something only. The wiping is only done with bread.
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on a Beit Shammai opinion.
He must be following Beit Shammai, right? In that, right?
Right.
So.
Ela Beit Shammai omrim mekanech velo bay madiach, Beit Hillel omrim af madiach havele mikule Beit Shammai mechomre Beit Hillel. So if you can say Beit Shammai says you wipe but you don't need to rinse, and Beit Hillel says that you have to do both.
Good, which means that Rabbi Zera now can follow both of them, right? It doesn't have to necessarily, right? So
right, and if that's what you're saying, then then that means this is one of those times where it's a kule of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is more machmir.
Good. Here's the problem, which I'll just throw in. There's 6 of those that were listed for us. I mean, it's 6. This isn't one of them, so that's part of the problem. So keep going.
Okay. Well, the Tanya gabe kule Beit Shammai v'chomre Beit Hillel. But and like you said, so it should be taught along. It should be taught along with the times that Beit Shammai is Mekil and Beit Hillel is Machmir.
Good. Keep going.
Ela Beit Shammai omrim mekanech v'hu adin lemadiach, uBeit Hillel omrim madiach v'hu adin lemekaneach. Mar amar chada or mar amar chada lo plige. So rather, the reason that we're not saying this is one of those times that Beit Shammai is more Mekil and Beit Hillel is more Machmir is because Beit Shammai says that wiping and rinsing are basically one and the same. And Hillel says that rinsing and wiping are one and the same. So they're actually not really disagreeing with one another, and it's not a matter of one being Machmir, one being Mekil. They're saying the same thing, they're just saying it from a different direction.
Yeah, I will say, I didn't give this to you, but Rashi throws in V'hu adin de travaihu ba'inan. We actually need both of them, right? That they're just talking about one, but the rules are the same for each, but that we actually need both potentially. So, okay.
Don't they need to ask why teach this bright, like why have this bright at all if there's not a machloket?
Good. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it gets us to both, right? It gets us to mekaneach umadiach, right? That you need both at the end of the day if you follow Rashi. And the other is that there's a brayta sitting out there that sounds like Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai disagree about it, and so we need to clarify that. That's my take, but maybe somebody else has a different take on it.
So. Right, it's a clear okimta on a problematic source, but I guess if you want to level out the playing field a little bit, you could say, look, there's a value in reporting halachot that you had that received from your teachers, and one received it as Mediach, and the other one received it as Mekaneach, and they're just definitionally the same.
Yeah. So, but great.
I don't think that's what actually is what is happening, Joel. I agree with you. There's a problematic Breita, and they had to deal with it. But if you want to rationalize, yeah.
And that's part of the Bavli, right? Is that we don't ignore these things, right? We grab them with the bull by both horns, and we deal with it. And so, but it's a good question. But now we get to the Gufa. So now we have to deal with Rabbi Zera's actual statement about how do you do kinuach hapeh. So let's see, Yavni, you want to take over?
גוף רבי זרע, אין קינוח הפה אלא בפת, והני מילי בדחיתי, אבל בדסעורי לא. So you can't, Rabbi Zera says, you can't wipe your mouth except with bread. You can't like clean out your mouth except with bread, and that refers to bread made from wheat, not bread made from barley. ודחיתי נמי, לא אמרן קרירה, אבל בחמימה משתרי. I might have pronounced that wrong. And even with wheat bread, it's not referring to it's not referring to any but cold wheat bread, but hot wheat bread that like sort of like absorbs it, or like stays in the mouth or something like that. It gets spread out.
Mm-hmm. That seems to be the Rashi, right? That it's soft and it gets stuck in your mouth, right? And so it clings to your mouth, I guess is the better way to put it. So it doesn't do a good job of actually cleaning anything out of there. So yeah. Okay.
And this also only refers to soft bread, but brittle bread, hard bread, no.
Yeah, and Rashi I didn't give the Rashi, people may have looked, right? He says hard bread, right? Right, it was like brittle, it breaks apart in pieces. So
breaks apart, which is what he had said about the barley bread also.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, but Hilchata, let's get the real.
והילכתה, בכל מילי הווה קינוח, לבר מקמחה תמרי וירקה. And the law is that you can do kinuach with anything except for flour, dates, and vegetables.
Great, right? Which actually covers quite a bit of stuff, truth be told. But I don't know about flour, right? I don't know, maybe people just put flour in there.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what that was about.
But great. Okay, so now I'm gonna go on to the next. That was great. But so far I just want to summarize where we are. Is that it sounds like between basar and gvina, you need, or gvina to basar really is the way we seem to be dealing with it. You need to wash your hands and potentially your mouth as well. That may require both rinsing and wiping of somehow. The wiping can be done with, seems to be done with most food items, but not all food items, right? That's where we're standing with this. We don't really have anything about order, though, so particular yet at this point in the Gemara, right? It's not so clear that the story was about Gvina and then Basar. And the other thing we know is that the other two things is that Oaf, right, is different from Basar. You may not need to do any of this stuff or all of it. We know that you can, if it's daytime, you don't have to necessarily wash your hands. You can just check them and see if there's any remnants on them. Okay, those are all the different things we're dealing with, factors at the moment. So if I think I got it.
Started to seem to me like the kinuach hapeh was not so much about like wiping your lips with bread as like eating bread or something else in order to clear it out.
I believe that's how I understand it, and that's how we'll see it.
Okay,
yeah, good. Okay, let's see who is next on my. Let's see. But Andres, you want to pick it up?
והלכת?
We're at Ba Mine Rav Asi Rabbi Yochanan. So here, I can show you right here on the thing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Ba Mine Rav Asi Rabbi Yochanan. So he asked Rav Asi to Rabbi Yochanan, Kama yishaha bein basar legvina? How much time do you wait between basar and gvina? אמר לי, ולא כלום. Any. Okay, so he says, I don't wait anything, and then he says, Ini, is this correct? Veha amar Rab Chisda, אכל בשר, אסור לאכול גבינה, גבינה, מותר לאכול בשר. And then he says, Rav Chiza, if you ate meat, then it is forbidden to eat gvina afterwards. But if you did the other way around, then mutar.
Yeah. This, by the way, I just want to pause you. This was the thing when I was leading off with too, that maybe in Eretz Yisrael they don't have a wait time, right? Rabbi Yochanan is the only Eretz Yisrael source we're going to get here in this piece, and he says lo klum, right? Yeah, to make him work with Rav Chisda, we're going to have to switch the order. But he could have just answered that. That could just be the answer. I don't wait anything. So.
אלא, כמה ישעה בין גבינה לבשר? So now the question is the other way around. From גבינת בשר אמר לי, ולא כלום.
Good.
Okay.
So
should I continue?
We'll let Josh pick up here since that ends kind of that topic, and now we'll do the gufa. So.
גופה?
Yeah, gufa, right there.
אמר רב חיסדא, אכל בשר, אסור לאכול גבינה, גבינה מותר לאכול בשר. רב חיסדא gives this order, if you eat meat, אסור, absolute forbidden to eat גבינה, if you've eaten גבינה, it's forbidden to eat meat. אמר לי רב אחא בר יוסף לרב חיסדא, רב אחא בר יוסף said to רב חיסדא, בשר שבין השיניים, מהו? What's the status, what's the law with meat between the teeth? קריאה לי, הבשר עודנו בין שניהם. He brought the verse, and the meat was still between their teeth.
Good. What's the drasha here, by the way? I'm going to push you on this. Maybe
I don't know, but it's about off, right?
It's about off, but
I don't know if that's relevant.
But there's the drasha being made here. Maybe I'll unless somebody else wants to jump in.
The meat is still still in their teeth.
So it's still meat if it's in their teeth.
Exactly, still call me. This is similar to like the drasha. Maybe I think it's famous, right? Chata Yisrael, Alphabisha Chata Yisrael, who, right? Yeah, this is about Achan in Yeshua. He's still called Yisrael even though he sinned, right? As proof that you don't you never leave the fold. Same idea. It's still called basar even though it's stuck between the teeth. So, okay, good. Keep going. Actually, let's. That's good. I'm going to stop you there, and we'll go to Tikva. We'll go next. So.
I don't quite understand the question there. It's because it's like, what is he asking? Like, oh, if I have meat stuck between my teeth and then I eat that, is that like when I counts as eating? Does that count as eating meat?
Good. Which will be one thing we see, right? The whole question of is between your teeth the important factor. This will have to do like if I just chew something but I don't actually swallow it, is that part of the problem? And that maybe that's the main thing that they're concerned with here is that meat between the teeth. Well, or meat between the teeth is a problem, or even whatever the wait time is between meat to milk. Even if you still have meat between your teeth, it's still meat, and you still have to get rid of it, and so you have to wait even longer or get rid of it. One of those two. So all those
might be related to the quinoa question of.
Good. Yeah.
Is it bread or soft bread?
So, and we'll see all that play out, right, when we get to the Shulchan Aruch. But first, let's get up Mar Ukva. Tikva, take us away.
Amar Mar Ukva, Ana la hamilta, Chala bar Chamra legabe Abba. Ilu Abba ki have achil abastra hadina, lo have achal gavina ad lemachar ad hashta, ve'ilu ana bahat suudata hu, velo achilna la suudata acharita. Sorry, velo achilna la suudata acharita achilna.
Great.
Yeah, so sorry, I lost. So Mar Ukva is saying that he's in this matter, he's like vinegar, the son of wine, because his father would wait a whole day once he ate meat to eat cheese, and he would eat. He waits one meal between them.
Great. So the big question I think sitting over this is Mar Ukva the minimum? Is he also Midat Chasidut, and his father is just even better than that, right? I know people have a sense from this, which it is. And even I'll even add this. I actually saw this in the source. I can't remember who it was, of this idea of maybe he's this is the challah to chamra comparison, the vinegar to wine comparison, has nothing to do with how long they wait, but how long they go between meals, right? That his father just ate once a day, and he eats twice a day, and this is actually about like the strength of the ability to go, a lot of time without eating, maybe it's more time to spend learning Torah or something. So
Yeah, because
sorry, Tekla, go ahead.
Tikva, go ahead, yeah, and then
I'm just wondering what would be the chassidut of it? Like, what would be the praise? Is it that they're so careful because they technically don't want to have any of this like tom mixing, or is there some kind of idea that there's actually like an ethical value in waiting between meat and milk and like really separate, like something spiritual happening there? What would be like what's their concern that would make it better and better and better the more you wait? If like if it is a concern of something between your teeth, once it's gone, there's no obvious reason why it's better to wait even longer. So that's what I'm asking. Like,
great. So, I mean, I have some guesses. Maybe other people have some thoughts on this. But one is that, or maybe I'll give somebody a chance to. So one thought is potentially like you could have missed something, right? Maybe there's still meat between your teeth and you didn't notice it, and so you have to wait even more hours just in case till it all kind of dissolves. Another possibility is that we're actually just concerned with separating between the two, and the more separation, the better, right? The more I separate between milk and meat, the better it is. It seems to be that I don't mix milk and meat. It's like I'd almost say the modern parallel might be, we go to more extremes than the Shulchan Aruch ever required in terms of cliche separation with milk and meat, right? I think most of us would probably never eat ice cream in our milk bowl, even though like there's no problem with that. And I mean, our ice cream in our meat bowl, right? Even though like strictly for the Shulchan Aruch, there's no problem. It's like there's something nice about keeping this more and more separate. That's possible. I don't know. It's a great question. Like, what is the Hasidut? That's why I'm also even willing to buy the argument that what was so great about his father, not that he waited so long, but it's the Kar Hadin is from meal to meal, and his father only ate once every 24 hours. And and it's really
That's
about
what I'm trying to read into the text, though, isn't it? Because
it
like
is.
why be phrased? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Hasidic source, so that's why I didn't bring it. But
I mean, you could also learn that this is saying there's no Ikar Hadin.
Exactly.
In other words, one does Suda Achrita, one does 24 hours, another person can wait 30 minutes. There is no Ikar Hadin. These are just behavior. Different people have different behaviors.
Exactly. So, and in fact, we'll see that. Well, we're going to look at the Tosfot next, because I think that's this Tosfot. I'm going to skip down a little bit to the Tosfot, the short Tosfot, just based on time. Let's do Data Achrita Achlina. Right. This is Mar Ukva saying, my father waited 24 hours. I just wait till the next Su'uda. Right. So let's see, what is the next Suda? So somebody, let's see, who was next? We had Tikva, you read, I got to go down my list. Isaac, did you read already?
No, I didn't.
You want to do this Tosfot right here?
Sure. Lisudata achlita achelna, lav bisuda סעודתה שרגילים לעשות אחת שחרית ואחת ערבית, אלא אפילו לאתר, אם סילק השולחן וברך מותר דלה פלוג רבנן.
Great.
Okay, so this isn't, when he says different meals, he doesn't mean like the meals that you eat, breakfast and then dinner at night. Instead, he means even one after another, so long as you clear the table and you make motzi, it's permissible. And Rabbanan,
Birkat Hamazon, doesn't he?
Oh, okay, you bench. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And Rabbanan don't disagree on this. There's no machloket.
I think Lopuk, they don't distinguish between different cases. It's meal to meal. They don't care about how long it is between meals, essentially. So is the low plug here, right? The low plug generally is like we don't distinguish between particular cases in halacha. We don't distinguish. It's meal to meal. That's it, right? At the end of the day.
Tosfos read it the way I read it?
I think so. Yeah, I think they say, right, you have to make it be a different meal, just like Mar Ukva says, right? But how do you make a different meal?
There is one difference between what he's saying. He's clearly saying there is a gezerah d'Rabbanan here of a specific statement, and the statement is misuda l'suda,
Yeah.
and that could be interpreted in different ways, but there is a specific rule.
Of Suda. I mean, that might just as simply be a case of, remember we saw last week in Pechet in the Shulchan Aruch, and this is from the Mishnah, you can't bring meat and milk on the same table, right? That may just be another restatement of that in some ways. Like once you clear the table, you have to bench before you clear the table, and once you clear the table,
So practically speaking, you couldn't do it any other. It has to be minimum would be a different meal.
Exactly. Yeah. So. I mean, you could imagine someone saying, okay, you don't bring on the same table at the same time. You bring one and then you eat the other. It's the same meal. But that seems pretty extreme to me as a way to read it. So, but so that's the Tosfot, right? The Tosfot. We also get in the Tosfot, I think, the important thing that generally they ate 2 meals a day back then, which is right, one in Shacharit, one in Arvit. And we're not going to look into it deeply, but up above the it's from Shabbat. It also shows up in Psachim. The what hour of the day they ate the meal in Shacharit was actually the 6th hour. That's going to be important for something I'll mention later as well. But that's so far the Tosfot. It sounds like I ate meat. All right, I say Birkat Hamazon. I clear the table, and I can eat milk as much as I want. Maybe I have to wash my hands potentially, right, or wash out my mouth. Not so clear, but let's look at the reef. So Lexi, everyone switched orders on me, but I think Lexi, you were next. So.
Okay. So Amar Ma'urkba Ava Bahamilta Chalabar Chamra Ana Deilo Ava Kandhava Achil Bisra Ha'idna Lo Ava Achil Gvina Ad Lamachar Ki Hashta Vil Ana Bahai Sudata Lo Achilna Besudata Achriti Achilna. So this is just the whole Mar Ukba story, fine, about his dad waits a whole day, he only waits between meals. Visham inu mad hat amarav chista achal basar asor lechol gvina deloshar lemechal gvina batar bisra ela ad shahile shior ma'id tzarich lisudat achriti delosh kachinan man deshar lemechal gvina batar bisra bepachot mahai shiora zahamar ukva aval gav shahile ki hai shiora. Right. So he's like, this story is proof that like what Rav Chisda meant when he said that like I can't eat like vina batar bisra or whatever. It means like I have to wait a certain shear between eating these things. And what's that shear? Minimally, it has to be a meal. Otherwise, like Mar Ukba waited, between meals and he still like kind of insulted himself. So there can't be a smaller shear than that.
Great. So this is at least against the Rav Nachum's read that, there is no Ikar Adin, and potentially against the Tosfot. Well, I don't know, Lexi or somebody else can tell me, like, is it against the Tosfot necessarily?
It seems perfectly in line with Tosfot.
Good. Seems in line with the Tosfot. Anybody else?
Well, I'm just curious what he means by the shiur, because
yeah,
once he starts talking about a shiur, it sounds very different from the next immediate meal, like Tosfos said. Tosfos says it's the immediate meal right after. Well, that's not a shiur. It wouldn't call that a shiur. That would be the shiur of the needle point, because it's just the next meal. So when he says shiur, he must be thinking about some numeric or some actual shiur that's measurable. So it does seem to me to be arguing on Tosfos. They say, no, you have to wait some number of hours.
Yeah.
He never gives a number for that.
He doesn't give a number for it, I agree.
Which really bothers.
But he has some concept of a shiur. And he must interpret, so he must be from Shacharis to Arvis. That's the other shiur that Tosfos is going against.
Yeah. So
I see your point, and I also feel like if he has an actual shiur in mind, he should name it.
Yeah, I would like it if you named it.
I don't know if because I don't really feel that the Reef is going to play fast and loose with language and say shiur if he really means like meh. But I also think the fact that he doesn't actually give a number to it or any sort of measurement that I can point to and say, oh, this is what he means, makes me feel like maybe he's not entirely certain.
Agreed. I don't know what the,
I don't know.
I didn't throw a number out. I don't know what the number
Oh, no,
is.
I know you didn't.
I mean, I said Shacharis to Arvis. That was like the next step. That's the only shear I know of at this point.
Yeah, and you could also imagine that the Reef says, there's a a place version, like a geographic location version of it. And like in some places they eat meals at the 6th hour and the 12th hour, let's say, and other places they eat at the 10th hour, and that's fine as long as you're not making an extra meal in there.
Very interesting. So you're actually giving support to the German custom, maybe at 3 hours. Like maybe we can see in the Riff that he says there's a shear, and he doesn't say what it is. So we know that there's some kind. So and it's the shear of from meal to meal, and that could be any. That could be talui b'zman u'makom.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it might be like a case per the Reef, right? If you ate, for your Shacharit Suda on Shabbat, you ate meat, and your Suda Shishit happens to come less than 6 hours later. I don't know. Maybe per the Reef, you could eat milk in that in your.
Yeah, well, I think there's an idea that if you're in a misgeret where your meals are not in your own control, like you're in the army, and they serve meat and then they serve milk, and at the next meal 4 hours later, and you wait 6, so you're allowed to eat it anyway because you're not in control.
Exactly.
So maybe
an airplane,
and that would be an airplane. I don't know. Yeah, that's not a misgeret. That's a one-time deal.
But
I wanted to add one thing real quick.
Yeah,
having an actual shiur, I don't know how much it would help because they didn't count hours the way we count hours now.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
A Shaz Manif was very different. I remember when I was at Pardes, we actually talked about this. That I remember Steve Wolf said that he thought the best logic he ever heard was 4 hours, because if we say 6 hours, the 6 hours in the winter is probably equivalent to about 6 hours in the summer. Sorry, is equivalent to about 4 hours in the winter. And so if we have to wait, say 240 minutes in July, then there's no reason that 240 minutes wouldn't be also good enough in December.
Good. No, there is. Maybe there is. Maybe it's dependent on the time. In the winter, whatever your normal meal eating, it's then in the summer people are not hungry as much because it's warm and they don't feel like eating, so you have to wait longer. I mean, there's no logic to say no.
Yeah, unless there is about like you're waiting for something to dissolve, right? In which case, then you might need a set amount of time, right? It's not just about meals. There's some taste or fat or things in your teeth that need to be
right. Is it just ceremonial waiting, or is it producing some result?
Exactly. So we'll see it.
Then you see from the Gemara though that from the fact that there's two different opinions. One says I did differently from my father. Sounds like it's not. It's just ceremonial. Sounds kind of ceremonial.
Yeah, I would agree, but it's gonna. We'll see. I put it in the document either yesterday or today. I can't remember which it was. But after probably anyone saw it. But we'll see. There's a machloket achronim on this question of what kind of hours we're talking. We haven't even seen hours yet, so let's get to hours. And let's see, Noam. I think did anyone not read that wanted to? We'll start. Maybe Noam, we'll have you go again. I want to go to the Rambam. We'll skip the Ran for the moment. The Rambam, like he so often does, I'm just going to put it out there. It's like an incredible, as far as I'm concerned, synthesis of this entire Gemara that we just read. It's just so beautiful. Whether or not you agree with what he did, I mean, it's an amazing job. My cards are on the table about how I feel about the Rambam. So, Noam, read the Rambam, all 3 halachot here.
Mishachal gvina o chalav tchila mutar lacho acharav basar miad v'tzarich shiadiach yadav v'kanech piv ben hagvina v'ben habasar uvameh mekaneach piv bepat o beperot shalosin uvolan o poltan v'kol mekanchin el hapeh chutz mitamarim o kemach o yarakot she'en elo mekanchin yafeh. So if one eats cheese or milk first, he's permitted to eat afterwards meat immediately, but he needs to first wash his hands and wipe his mouth, whether it's from between the gvina and the basar. And with what does he wipe his mouth? With bread or with fruits, and he chews them up, and then he can swallow them or spit them out. And you can clean with any type of bread, or I think this is actually an idiom here. At a pet. Sorry, you can clean your mouth with anything except for dates, flour, or vegetables that don't clean well, wipe well.
Great.
Bameh devarim amarim babasar bema oya. אבל אם אכל בשר עוף, אחר שאכל הגבינה או החלב, אינו צריך לא קינוח הפה ולא נטילת ידיים. So with regard to what were these things said, if you're eating meat of a behema or a chaya after the gvina, but if he was eating the fowl meat after the gvina or after the fish, he doesn't need to do kinuach or netilat yadayim.
Yeah, interesting thing, right? Chaya, we haven't seen come into here at all. The fact that the Rambam categorizes it with behema and not with birds is strange. A lot of ink gets spilled on this question because, right, chaya, just like oaf, is derabanan, not deraita, but nonetheless, Rambam categorizes it with behema here. Okay, so
he also doesn't mention a requirement of mediach, which is distinct from netilat yadayim.
Good. I know that's really interesting. I think either he's reading it as not like Rashi, and then in the end where it's just mekanech et hapeh, or he's reading mediach as somehow mediach et hayadayim, not mediach et hapeh. So I wasn't sure which one he was doing there. So, but good. So that's the Rambam so far, and that's really the first half of our sugya that we just saw. He kind of nicely synthesizes everything into a good, really easy to understand these rules. Okay, but the last one I think is the kicker. So go for it.
Mi shechal basar batchila ben basar behema ben basar oaf lo yochal acharav chalav ad sheyeh b'nehen kedei shiur suda acheret v'hu kamo shesh sha'ot mimnei habasar shel ben hashinayim she'eno sar b'kinuach. So one who eats meat first, whether it's behema meat or fowl meat, he should not eat afterwards milk until he waits between them the amount of time of another meal, and that is 6 hours. It's like 6 hours.
Yeah, 6-ish hours. Yeah.
No, what I think is an important distinction.
Good.
It's 6-ish hours because the meat between the teeth does not become putrid through kinuach.
Is it removed?
Does not get moved. Sorry, does not get moved. Yeah. Last year, right? Does not get moved.
So good. A lot going on in this Rambam here, right? One, how you read Kamoshe Sha'ot is like a really interesting question. Is that just kigon? Like for us, it's 6 hours, or is it like 6 hours, or like 6 hours is a kind of a hard time. You have to wait something about 6 hours. Maybe miksata hasha kehula or something like that. But
or even stronger. Like kamo is just saying is.
Great.
That would
6 hours.
It is v'hu kamo shesho. It is 6 hours. And that might, how else would he have written it? V'hu shesho.
Yeah.
He's talking about Suda Achrita is not shesho.
Yeah.
Suda Achrita, the Meshech Zman is kamo. He has to sort of put in a word there.
So it's good, and that could be just 6 hours, no question. And he gives a reason why you need to wait that long, which sounds like time is a factor, right?
Yeah,
it's the basar ben hashinayim. That's what we're concerned with. So, but any thoughts on the Rambam before we kind of push on?
Well, I think the Rambam's language in some ways supports the earlier reading of the Rif. Meaning the Rif uses very similar in Kadeshi or Suda Acheret. It just doesn't define what that is. And I assume the Rambam was aware of the Rif. So, right. So
the Rambam says he almost always copies the Rif, right? As far as he's concerned.
Exactly, which leads credence to that reading.
So.
Yeah,
good.
I think so. I think really the Rambam is really just adding a little bit to the Rif, and he's saying that shear is 6 hours. I mean, by the way, that that's the way the Sephardi poskim learn it. This whole idea of kamo, for a long time, I mean, I don't wait 6 hours, I wait 5 hours. And I always use the kamo as the basis, but I think that is completely forced reading. I don't think that's what the Rambam really means.
Yeah, I have a tradition of waiting into the 6 hour based on that too. So
I do that, but that was my minhag from the beginning, so I'm not going to change it. But I don't think that the reading is really the right reading. Personally.
Yeah. So
I don't see why you say that it wouldn't make sense just to say Vahu Sheshaot. Like, why do you need another word in there?
Because he's not talking about the meshech. He never mentioned, in other words, he never meant, he just said the Suda Achrita. I don't see it in front of me, but he says the Suda Achrita. But the Suda Achrita is not 6 hours. It's the time between, it's the meshech zman bein Suda Suda. In other words, it's his way of saying it's a meshech zman. It's a kamo. It's measured as. We can maybe translate it as like that. It's measured as and kamo, and it is measured as 6 hours. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's not perfect.
So Nachum, where's the first mention of into the 6 hour? I understand the reading of the Rif, the forced reading of the Rif, but when did it enter the Masorah, to use your earlier term?
You're saying what basis? You're saying what basis does Rav Nachum have for doing 5 hours?
Did you bring it into the Masorah? Who brought it in?
I don't know. It is late. You're right. You're asking a good question. I think I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look into that. Maybe Joel will tell
I'll look for it. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I always, it's Torah Sheba'al Peh that I learned.
I think it snuck in.
Yeah.
You're giving it a nice word to Torah Sheba'al Peh. I think it's snuck in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really well found. I don't know if anybody really pegs it on the Rambam.
That's one. Have you ever seen anyone of who have you seen? You don't have to say the name of the person, but who have you seen who's held by that? What kind of person?
Like where are they from?
Brandeis University.
Me.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you saw somebody. I don't know.
That was my minhag from when I first started keeping kashrut. From
okay.
When way back when I'm pretty much after my bar mitzvah. But it was based on ignorance. But I'm not veering off from it. My brother married a Dutch lady, and he didn't take her minhag, which was the one mistake.
They wait, what, 2 hours? 2 hours is it?
1 hour.
1 hour?
She waits 1 hour.
So
her sister married a convert, and he said, well, I'm taking my wife's minhag because I don't have a convert. So he's Mexican, but he waits 1 hour. And
we'll see that's the Ramah too, right? They, there's a Mali smoke for 1 hour.
Yeah, Rev Lopez Cardozo, I think, said that the 1 hour is a chumrah on Suda on the Tosfot, and the 6 hour and the 6 hour is just the halacha. So actually, if you keep 1 hour, you're being a chassid. You're doing a chumrah.
I heard from somewhere, I don't remember where it was, that the German 3 hour custom is also a chumrah on the 1 hour. But I don't know if that's true or not. So
Asup shara b'yadam.
I said that 2 years ago.
But
I take it back. I take it back.
Maybe I got it from you. I apologize.
Yeah, you got it from me.
The Aruch HaShulchan, I think it's the Aruch HaShulchan, says Asup shara b'yadam. In other words, they just like Rav Nachum, they just did what they felt like doing. There's no basis.
So fair enough. So all right, let's see. How are we doing on time? Yeah, I think let's do the Meiri, because I think it's a nice kind of summary of a lot of the stuff with some added factors. Meiri is always a good source for this kind of thing. And then we'll take a break and then Shulchan Aruch. So let's see, Yavni, you want to do the Meiri? It's a lot.
Sure, I'll try. אכילת בשר אחר גבינה או גבינה אחר בשר, יש בה מחלוקת בין הפוסקים, ומחלוקתם תלוי בפירוש שמועה זו, ומה שנהגו בה אבותינו ורבותינו לפי מה שהיו מקבלים בפירושה, היא שאם אכל בשר בהמה, אינו אוכל אחר כן גבינה, אפילו בקינוח הפה ובנטילת ידיים, עד שיעבור 6 שעות, והוא שיעור שבין סעודה לסעודה. עברו 6 שעות, אוכל גבינה, אף על פי שלא קינח את הפה ולא נטל את ידיו. אחר אכילת הבשר בין שיניו, שכשיעור זה כבר נתאכל במקומו, ואינו קרוי בשר, לא נאמר על בשר שבין השיניים, שהוא נקרא בשר, אלא בתוך זמן זה, ויש אומרים שאף לאחר זמן זה צריך לסלקו קודם שיאכל גבינה.
Great.
All right, so yeah, should I go
Wow.
back and translate?
I just give
Or-
a nice summary of what he's got here.
That is a great,
Okay,
great source.
so-
Mhm.
I appreciate you, Joel. for finding that.
So there's a machloket, but the opinion that we're getting is that and the practice is that after you eat meat, you can't have cheese, even like you don't do the cleaning out the mouth. All you do is but you do have to wait 6 hours, and that's the time between meals, and then there's an issue. But if you have something between your teeth, then that like counts for eating it, and therefore you have to wait from after you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, the important thing about the basar ben hashinayim, right? This is that 6 hours doesn't destroy that. It's still basar, even after 6 hours.
Right. It's because of the side.
Really?
Right. And so there you have
Wait,
to.
wait, wait.
You have
So
to
wait
get
a
out of
second. You
your-
guys
out of
teach
your
me. I read it the opposite.
Good. So how did you read it?
I'll start from the middle. Velo natal yadav achar achilat basar bein.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
You don't have to
Good.
Right.
wash your
Yeah,
hands after that. Shekol
Right.
kashiur zeh, that once this time has passed, nitakel bimkomo. It has been digested in between your teeth.
Yeah.
Veino karui basar. Velo,
But
and then he has a kasha because the pasuk says it's a basar bein hashinayim. So he says lo nemar al basar shebein hashinayim shunikra basar ela b'toch zman zeh. That's
Yeah.
only it's in the 6 hours. And now he's giving us the whole reason for waiting 6 hours.
Mhm.
That's the time, which we've heard this
Mhm.
before, but it's never, I never saw it so well said here.
Yeah.
That the meat will digest, that after that point, it's no longer, in other words, the 6 hours is the time it takes to digest even what's in your teeth. So if you don't have toothpicks, so you can, then for sure you can eat your cheese now because whatever is there is digested.
Yeah.
So
Or
why
it's
don't we
putrid.
just,
Thank you. That's right.
so why
But
not just bypass the entire thing by flossing?
Well, that lo plug rabbanan, and they made
Yeah.
it, that's their rule, and you can't get out of it. But that's why they made the rule. Just because you know the reason for why they made the rule doesn't mean that you don't have to follow the rule anymore when it doesn't apply to you. That's a principle in halacha.
Mhm.
It's like the brothers being careful.
But he brings right at the end of it a yeshomrim that say no, you still have to take it out, right? He
Take it
I
out,
mean,
take it out.
the Meiri where he brings another source there. He doesn't tell us who it is.
Right. Well,
Right.
that would just be an
Yeah.
extra chumrah. In other words, if you know it's there, take it out. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
So, but you're right. It sounds
Right,
from
right,
this
right,
like the entire thing is about basar binan shinayim, right? And 6 hours is enough to make it not be basar anymore. So, okay.
6 hours. 6 hours gives us a completion of a larger theory of derech bishul, digestion.
Yeah.
The full bishul, I'm not fully joking. The full bishul takes place, and it's it's not just in the sense of eradication, but it's part of the whole process.
But
this
yeah,
is very far afield from, let's say, Tosfot.
Oh yeah.
We look back at Tosfot and we say, well, wait a second. Tosfot was not saying, he was saying eat it right away. Well,
Mhm.
now he's seeing a very acute argument,
But,
or very pronounced argument.
yeah, but let's do the second paragraph too in the Miri, just based on time, and then we'll stop there, I think.
Yep.
Let's see, who was reading? Was it
I
Yavni?
was. Do you want me to keep
Yeah,
reading or?
go for it. Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
אכל בשר עוף, אף הוא צריך להמתין כשיעור זה, וכן כתבו גדולי הפוסקים והמחברים להחמיר בו כבשר.
I just want to stop in the Miri, Gedolei Poskim and Gedolei Machabrim. That's the Reef and then the Rambam. So just it's
Nice.
by his nicknames. So
Right.
So that means that he's reading it as 6 hours, not as Kamos 6 hours.
exactly, yeah. So keep going.
Right. להחמיר בו כבשר בהמה, להמתין אחריו עד 6 שעות, וכן נהגו בכל גלילותינו אכל גבינה ורוצה, בכל גלילותינו, אכל גבינה ורוצה לאכול בשר בהמה, מקנח פיו מפני פירורי גבינה, והנשארים או בין השיניים, שגבינה, אף שבין השיניים מתנקות הם בקינוח, ואם היה בלילה מוסיף על הקינוח נטילת ידיים, וביום אינו צריך להוסיף נטילת ידיים, שהרי הוא רואה את ידיו אם יש בהם פירורי גבינה אם לאו. So chicken we treat like meat, and going the other direction between cheese and meat, we only need to wash out our mouths because like there might be something in your mouth, but it does clean off well, unlike meat that really gets stuck in there. You should also wash your hands if it's at night, then you should wash your hands, but during the day, because you can see your hands, if there's cheese on it, you don't need to wash your hands.
Right. So I'll just add the very end of the Meiri here. He talks about, the whole rule that if you eat a bird, then maybe eat milk and then to then eat bird afterwards, you don't need kinuach hapen and so forth. And I just want to read this. V'chayak var bi'arnu shnechlaku ba haposkim yesh poskim shedina ka'of v'hu ikar dvarim ela shenagu lach mirba kebehema. Right, so he says the whole question: do we categorize a chaya with behema, or do we categorize it with oath? And he says, even though they're both derabanan, oath and chaya, because it looks more like behema, we actually categorize it with behema. In the case of gvina,
but
I feel like it's not
but
that
he already said nagula achmir gam be'of.
Here he's talking about whether or not you can eat it apikorim, right? That you eat gvina, and then you need to do quinoa next. I didn't read the whole fifth paragraph. Sorry, Lexi, I interrupted you.
I was just gonna say that, like, to me, it feels less like a conceptual distinction so much as like a mitiut distinction of being like, I experience like venison as being similar to like beef to the extent to which it like stays in your mouth or whatever. Like, I think it's like kind of like about the quality of the meat in some way.
Good. So I guess it depends. I read domet as looks like, but maybe I'm wrong. That I jumped to that conclusion. So,
well, he does say the ikr is that it is like chicken, and it's just that we don't feel comfortable treating it that way, so we're machmir.
Yeah.
Elishanagu lachmir.
But yeah, good point. That's also so ikar din. It's like But all right, with that, I mean, the meat area unfortunately gets left out of most of this halacha conversation historically, but I think there's some good stuff in here. So we'll take a break and then we'll come back to the machaber. So. other Beit Yosef you might have. Did anyone look at Orach Chaim Kuf Ayin Gimel? Okay. So that Kuf Ayin Gimel just is something to do outside. That's in the middle of Hilchot Seudah. It's the whole question of Mayim Benonim and washing your hands in the middle of a meal, and the whole thing of waiting. It gets into like washing after you eat cheese before you eat basar. And so therefore has some parallels to the stuff over here. It's Pesach Sheni, and Noam is celebrating, I noticed. But his matzah. So maybe not in Eretz Yisrael it's Pesach Sheni anymore, but here it's still Pesach Sheni. Good. So Asher, kick us off. Shulchan Aruch, Achal Basar.
Okay. Achal Basar, אפילו של חיה ועוף, לא יאכל גבינה אחריו, עד שישהה 6 שעות. ואפילו אם שהה כשיעור, אם יש בשר בין השיניים, צריך להסירו, והלועס לתינוק צריך להמתין.
Great.
So you have meat, and I'm assuming afilu here means whether of an animal or of a bird.
Oh, no, I think it's even, right? Because remember, behema is the stam case of meat here. So
right. That's why I would have thought because if it said afilu be'of. But the fact that it starts with afilu b'chaya, the chaya is sort of the
no, chaya is a non-domesticated animal or a wild
okay.
animal. Also derabanan with milk. So
okay, okay. So you have the meat, even if it's of a chaya or of a bird. You don't eat cheese afterwards until 6 hours have passed.
Great.
And even if the time has passed, but you still, and even if that time has passed, but you still have meat between your teeth, then you still have to take it out. You still have to rinse it out. To take it, it says take it out, but I'm assuming it means based on the mikorot that we had earlier to rinse it out,
or to wipe it out with bread or something like that.
Right, to wipe it out. And the person who, and even somebody who's chewing food for a baby has to wait.
Great, right. So this is not even about did you swallow the food and it's in your stomach and there's some flavor coming up, right? This sounds like even if you chewed it and spit it out, it's you still have to wait 6 hours. This, by the way, I'll look at the Taz in a second, but like could actually be a case not just for that, but if you're tasting food, for instance, right? Often when you're tasting, when cooking, I think you often spit it out, or you can, but that might be a problem for the mechaber. So good. I'm gonna stop here. I didn't assign this Taz, but I think it's actually really important, so I should have. So Taz Aleph, does somebody maybe have read it already, or feels brave enough to read it cold? I'll take a volunteer for this one. So.
I can read.
Go for it, Noam.
There are 2 reasons for this. Ha'achad shabasar motzi shuman umoshech tam azman aruch. V'lefi zeh mi shelo ochel ela lo es letinok eno tzarich lamtit. So the first is that the meat, it exudes fattiness, is fat, and then it continues to pull the tom for a long time, and it makes the tom exist for a long time. And because of this, one who doesn't eat but only chews for a baby doesn't need to wait because there's no tom.
Mm-hmm.
The tom hasheni, different tom here. Hu tom harambam mishum basar sheben hashinaim demikre basar ad sheshot. B'achar kach have kemuchal. Lefi zeh gam haloes chayav lamtin rak yesh kula b'basar sheben hashinaim sheachar sheshot v'kaima lan lachmir kishnei tamim. The second reason is the reason of the Rambam, that because of the meat that exists between the teeth, for it's called meat for 6 hours, and afterwards it deteriorates. And because of this, one who chews is obligated to wait. There's a kula that with teeth, that meat between the teeth, that basically becomes permitted after 6 hours. And then we operate stringently according to both opinions.
Exactly. Right. So if you if it's just about the meat between your teeth, then even if you chew, it's the 6 hours is only about the meat between your teeth. And if you chew, that would be a problem. But after 6 hours, it's fine. You don't need to get rid of it, right? Because it's no longer, it's like the Meiri said, it's no longer meat. It's been dissolved. And the second reason that we got, which we didn't get from the Rambam, is that when you eat meat, it's like flavor keeps going in your mouth when you've swallowed it. It sounds like here, right? If you actually fully swallowed it, you still have the flavor coming up for 6 hours. And there you might be machmir about the meat still between your teeth, even after 6 hours. But you'd be makil about if you chewed something but didn't swallow it. You chewed it to make it soft for a child, or you were tasting it and spit it out, or something like that. So, but we're machmir to both of those things at the end of the day, per the mechaber. So and per the Taz. Good.
I just want to clarify. So for both of them, if at like 3 hours you find meat between your teeth, you would have to re-wait 6 hours from that moment. It's Rambam is just the who is just that after 6 hours it no longer has the status of meat, the meat that's between your teeth.
I think the Rambam would say, even if at hour 5 you found meat between your teeth, if you wait 1 more hour, it won't be meat anymore. Don't worry about it. And anything you find at hour 6, it's not meat. It's dissolved meat and no longer has the status of basar. So, but it gives, by the way, it's like a midrashic thing. The whole story of the Slav, right? The meat was still between their teeth. Sounds like it was 6 hours, right? It wasn't very long. It was less than 6 hours that that the whole story happens. So it's actually a very nice midrashic read there as well. But good. So with that, let's go to. I want to see. Let's go to the Ramah. So Asher, you just read. Is that right? So Lexi, do you mind picking up with the Ramah?
Yeah, sorry, where are we picking up?
It's Seif Aleph at the Haggah, very beginning of Haggah.
Great. ואם מצא אחר כך בשר שבין השיניים ומסירו, צריך להדיח פיו קודם שיאכל גבינה. Fine, wash out your mouth.
That seems, by the way, like the Ramah is holding that it's not about that 6 hours gets rid of the basar between your teeth. He's holding the first opinion of the Taz. So
yeah. ויש אומרים, אין צריכים להמתין 6 שעות, רק מיד עם סילק וברך ברכת המזון, מותר על ידי קינוח בהדחה, right, that's the Tosfot position. במנהג הפשוט מדינו אלו להמתין אחר אכילת הבשר שעה אחת, ואוכלים אחר כך גבינה. So this practice has become common to 1 hour after meat. מיהו צריכים לברך גם כן ברכת המזון אחר הבשר. You still need to say ברכת afterwards. אז הוויק סעודה אחרת, מותר לאכול לדברי מקלים. Because that makes it like I still have waited from סעודה לסעודה. אבל בלא ברכת המזון לא מהנה המתנת שעה. ואין חילוק אם המתינה שעה קודם ברכת המזון או אחר כך. I can do this in whatever order I want. ואם מצא בשר בין שיניו אחר שעה צריך לנקרו להסירו. Same deal, I can't have meat literally in my teeth. ויש אומרים אין לברך ברכת המזון על מנת לאכול גבינה, אבל אין נזהרים בזה. Some say like I shouldn't be dafka like using this as like a tool to suddenly be able to eat like my cheese now, but like if I did it, ויש מדקדקים להמתין 6 שעות אחר אכילת בשר לגבינה, וכן נכון לעשות. It's like I just spent all this time talking to you about the people who do 1 hour, but in fact, you should still do 6 hours.
Yeah, this is I love this Ramah here for that reason, partially. He starts out, I just want to review, I mean, Lexi said it so well, right? He starts out with the Tosfot, the opinion of the Tosfot, that it's just Suda li Suda. And he says, we have a tradition of 1 hour, right? He's added a time element to it, which the Tosfot sounds like 5 minutes. I don't know, how long does it take you to bench and clear the table? Maybe 7 minutes. It's and then he says at the end, and 6 hours isn't a bad idea. So let's do that too. Or it's v'chein nachon la'asot, whatever that means. And you'll actually see if you look at the Shach, he says, actually we'll look. Yeah, I want to look at the Shach and the Taz there. So I'm looking at time. Let's start with the Lexi, since it's short. Why don't you take the Shach in Chet to v'chein nachon la'asot?
V'chein nachon la'asot. וכך כתוב מהרש"ל, וכן ראוי לעשות לכל מי שיש בו ריח תורה, אין שם.
Yeah. I love that. If you're a Baal
Yeah,
Torah,
It was in, I forget if it was like in the Shachar or someone else, but I remember there being a thing where they were basically like, if people who are not like, I don't remember if we used the term Reach Torah, but something like B'nai Torah, and they're whatever, and like they're doing it, you don't have to make such a big deal. Like it's not like actually so particularly bad, but like B'nai Torah should really be like waiting 6 hours.
exactly. Yeah, I know. I know. I think I saw something like that too. But it's a pretty amazing piece there from the Marshal. But all right, good. And then we've got a long. Yeah, I want to do this Taz. Achar Chilat Basar Sha'achat. This is on the Ramah. This is Sif Katan Bet. The Ramah says, right, we make it an hour between the two. So let's see. Lexi Yavni, you're on for.
אחר אכילת בשר שעה אחת, זה לשון המהר"י. בזה רבים עושים פשרה מדעתן, להמתין שעה אחת אחר הסעודה בשר, וסילקו ובירכו ואוכלים גבינה. אף על גב דלא אשכחן רמז לשיעור זה מכל מקום, רמז לשיעור זה.
Yeah.
So the 1 hour comes from Marais, and this is like just this is ridiculous, and people do this even though there's no indication of this in any of the sources.
Yeah, I think the Lashon of the Mari though is describing the custom, not the Mari had this custom.
Right. I thought he was gonna get into that more. Yeah.
But we're still going with this language.
Wait,
though.
Joel, can you share your screen?
Right.
Are you still sharing your screen?
This is in the Ramah. In the Ramah. This is in the Taz.
No, you didn't give it out. Okay.
Yeah. So.
מכל מקום מי ימחה בידם הועיל והתוספות ורעביה מתירין אבל פירוש זהו דעת אבל הצנועים מושכים ידיהם מסעודת שחרית לערבית גם נוהגים העולם דאין חילוק בזה בין עוף לבהמה.
Yeah.
ורש"ל
so stop there for a second. So
yeah.
So what does the Mari say?
And in any case, you don't really need to rebuke them because we have the Mekil opinions of the Tosfot. Yeah.
And the Rav, right. Pretty important, figures here. So okay.
Who's the Rav?
Is Eliezer Ben Yoel, I believe. He's a German posek, and I think it's the 13th century, if I get this right. He gets quoted by the Beit Yosef all over the place. He's a very interesting posek in general.
ורש"ל פירש כל הבשר סימן, הפרק כל הבשר סימן ט' תמה על זה, למה נהגו להקל בזה נגד הריף ורמב"ם שהצריכו לכל הפחות 6 שעות וכתב and Marshal was very surprised at this custom because we have the Rif and the Rambam very strongly saying that you need 6 hours.
At least 6 hours, right? It sounds like right.
At least 6 hours, yeah.
No, the Rif doesn't say that.
It's true. Yeah. Keep going.
וכתב שרדות שנוהגים כרמב"ם, ולא כתוב דמתירים. ולא כתוספות דמתירים. And also the who was it? Yeah. And also the Sharidul says that we hold like the Rambam and not like those permissive Tosfot. ומכל מקום גם סילוק ובירך בעינן, דאם לא כך אפילו המתין כל היום אסור. And also, I guess there's also Sharidul says that that even if you wait 6 hours, you still need to you still need to take the stuff off the table and to bench. Otherwise, the 6 hours doesn't do you anything. If you're sitting at your table for 7 hours, you can't.
A long suda.
It still counts as one meal. Yeah. Achashverosh style. וכתב עוד, ואם אי אפשר למחות ביד בני אדם שאינן בני תורה, אבל בבני תורה ראוי למחות ולגעור בהם שלא יקלו פחות מ6 שעות עד כאן. And this is what Lexi was saying that, yeah. והוא העריך ובלבוש כתב דהך המתנה שעה שזכר רמה הוא מדברי סמג והוא טעות סופרים שלא כתב שום פוסק כן, רק מהר"י ואיסור והיתר כתבו שהעולם נוהגים כן, אבל לא דדינה האחי, ודבר פשוט הוא דמי שנוהג, דמי שנוהג בפעולה זו להמתין שעה אחת, שצריך גם כן לקינוח והדחה, כמו שהוזכר בדברי יש אומרים של רמה, שמזה נמשכה הכולה הזאת.
Great.
And right, so this is that this is what you were saying, that the statement of 1 hour comes from the Samag, and it's a mistake because no posek says it, rather the Maharai and the Isur V'Heter just say that that's the practice, not that that's the law. And it's obvious that if you do take this absurd practice of waiting 1 hour, then you certainly also need to wipe and wash your mouth out, as it says in the Yeshomrim of the Rama, which is the source of this.
Good. And what's his concern? Why does he need to say that you need to do hadachan? And
because if you wait 6 hours, you don't need to do hadachan.
Good. Yeah. So you might have thought, well, 1 hour just replaces 6 hours. And
it's just like my shiro, yeah. But no.
Yeah, no, it doesn't replace that. Good. Before we get to bet, yeah, I think we can do it just time-wise. I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay. The whole question about these hours we're talking about, I think it is actually halachically very important. That the question is, like, what kind of, we brought this up, but what kind of hours are we talking about? And so I just want to, let's see, so change my order again. Sometimes Zoom bothers me. Tikva, you're going to be next. But you know what? I'll read this because I didn't give this to you guys ahead of time. So maybe just Pri Chadash, I just want to show the Pri Chadash says, Umihu lav dafka shesh shaot kigon bechoref she'ayimim ksarim kol she'achal basar b'shachar mutar lechol gvina b'sudat tzarayim b'chein im achal basar b'chatzi hayom mutar lechol ba'arvit afagav deleka ben achila lechira ela kamo arba shaot b'kiruv. All right. But then he says, "Zedavar muskam lechule alma." Right? It's like it's not 6, like watch hours. It goes by the time of year. It's 6, where an hour is 1/12 of the daylight time. All right. And that's the way he goes on. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he says, the time of the Gemara, you ate the first meal in the morning and you had the next one before the evening, and that was based on the length of the day. It wasn't based on some set 60-minute hours. That's the Pri Chadash. The Aruch HaShulchan, though he says Katava Tur achal basar loshna behema chayav of lo yochal kvina acharav al sheyishech keshiur shemizman sudat haboker ad sudat ha'erev shehu shesh shaot. And then it isn't. I didn't follow how this gets here in brackets. Timidiyot behu reva me'et le'et. Right? No. He says it is 6 fixed hours. Right? And I think I'm guessing I didn't trace this down, but if you remember, our original discussion was Mar Ukva and his father, and Mar Ukva's father waited 24 hours, and so maybe they're seen as a percentage of that 24 hours. It's a percentage of Meit La'et is where they're getting 6 Tmidiyot hours. That's my guess. I brought the Gra, we're not going to look at it inside, but he bases the whole 6 hours on this thing of the different hours in the day, what you do from Masechet Shabbat, which also sounds like those are relative hours depending on the length of the day. So maybe the Gra agrees with the Pri Chadash. I'm just going to leave that there before we go on with the Shulchan Aruch. But I don't know, does maybe somebody has the custom of waiting, different length hours based on the time of year?
Actually, the part that you didn't read of that source said, said that exact svara, that once you're lenient, In the winter, you can be leaning in the summer too.
Oh, interesting. The Pri Chadash you're talking about there.
Yeah, the Pri Chadash.
Yeah. Mhm.
So he actually used that svara that like if it's leaning in the winter, you can be leaning in the summer too.
Yeah. So it could be 4 hours, right? Which may get you to some of the other customs out there as well. But I only found that Pri Chadash today, so I only kind of glanced through it. But so I've always learned, my own practice has always been to wait, like clock hours, but not per, a percentage of the daylight. But I was wondering if people out there had the practice of relative hours. So, but
it would be complicated.
It would be very complicated. True. It's you'd have to go to either you look at the sun or you go to Maizmanim and you take a look at what the relative hour is these days. So, all right, Tov, let's go to the next to Seif Bet, if that's okay. In the Shulchan Aruch, Achal Gvina, Mutar le'echol acharav basar. Let's see, who's reading? Let's go. Tikva, you're going to be next anyway, so let's have you read.
אכל גבינה מותר לאכול אחריו בשר מיד, ובלבד שיעיין בידיו שלא יהיה שום דבר מהגבינה הנדבק בהם. So you can have cheese directly after meat, but you just have to check, right, so that there's no cheese on there. ואם היה בלילה שאינו יכול לעיין אותם היטב, צריך לרחצם. So you have to wash them only at night. When you can't check them well. But צריך לקנח פיו להדיחו, והקינוח הוא שלא קצת וקנח בו פעם יפה. וכן בכל דבר שיוצא חוץ מקמחה ותמר וירקה, לפי שהם נדבקים בניחם. But you do have to wipe the mouth and wash it out, and you can do this with anything that we saw in the Gemara, except for flour and dates and vegetables, because they get. So I wasn't sure what this is. Like based on the comment, is this the cheese or maybe the molars, or I'm not sure what he's.
I was trying to decide if it was the roof of the mouth, the side of the mouth, but it sounds like it gets stuck instead of actually pulling stuff out of your teeth. That seems to be the yeah, I wasn't 100% sure.
It's the gums, no?
I could be right. Makom l'malami beta blia karov l'shinai.
That's Hebrew.
But that sounds to me like your palate.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I thought it was the roof of the mouth. Is the roof of the mouth the palate?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I meant anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably all considered one area. In modern Hebrew, chanichaim is gums.
Yeah, but I didn't know what the mechaber.
Yeah, but it's probably all like one thing. In other words, all that skin inside your mouth.
Okay, great. So.
ואחר כך ידיך פיו במים וביין, במדרים אומרים בבשר בהמה וחיה, אבל אם בא לאכול בשר עוף, אחר גבינה אינו צריך לא קנוח ולא נטילה. And afterwards, you still have to wash out the mouth with water or wine, but this is only with meat itself and chaya, but not with oaf. And yeah, if you're having oaf after gavina, you don't have to do any of these things.
Great.
Mouth or hands.
Yeah, so we'll stop there for the moment because I want to look at the shach, two shachs here. But yeah, you'll notice just a couple of things, right? This is we had this, the Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai both think that you need hadacha and kinuach, and here he's paskening that way. You need both of them, and he categorizes like the Rambam did that beheman chaya you need this, but oaf you don't need this, right? Which we saw, of course, in the Gemara just had oaf as the case where you can do it be'apikurin, whatever that word means. So seemingly without hadacha and without kinuach. With that, I want to just look at the shach. I want to look at both Yud Daled and Tet Vav. Let's see. Tiffa, do you feel confident taking those two as well? Let's go for it.
Sorry, can you say again? What they
Shach Yud Daled, Sif Katan Yud Daled, and then the next one as well.
בבשר בהמה וחיה, ואף אגב דחיה מדרבנן, כיוון שבשרה דומה לשאר בהמה החמיר ובשבע. So this is like we saw before, that even though it's actually derabanan, because it's similar to a behema where machmer on it.
Yeah, whatever, as you know, Lexi pointed out, whatever similar may mean there, right? It's not so, maybe not so clear, but good. And the next one too?
So
Oh no, sorry. No, let's wait. We're not at the next one yet. We got to do the Ramah first. So don't do that one yet. We'll have anything people wanted to bring in from that Mechaber there before we go to the Ramah. I want to, before we get to the next piece, I'll tell a very quick story. I taught in a high school in the DC area for a year, and they used to have like a cafeteria in there, and it was great as a teacher. You could get very cheap food, but there was and some days they serve meat, some days they serve milk, and one day they were serving cheese, and they had a big sign up that said, if you eat this cheese, you must wait 6 hours before you eat meat. I thought that was really interesting poskening they were doing for me. But let's look at the Ramah here, and Josh, you want to take the Ramah for us?
ויש מחמירין אפילו בבשר אחר גבינה, וכן נוהגים, שכל שהגבינה קשה, אין אוכלים אחריה אפילו בשר עוף, כמו בגבינה אחר בשר. וכן הוא בזוהר. So some מחמיר, even with meat after cheese, and that's the practice when the cheese is hard. Even we don't eat even chicken after it, in the same way, to the same extent that one doesn't eat cheese after meat. This is based on a Zohar, the controversial Zohar, I think.
I know it was a controversial Zohar, but it's a Zohar.
No, because it doesn't seem to say what people think it says, no?
Yeah, well, good. We'll talk about the length of time it may not say. So that's maybe that's the problem. But keep going.
ויש מקלים ואין למחות, רק שיעשו קינוח והדחה ונטילת ידיים. מיהו? טוב להחמיר.
Great.
And some Mekel don't get into an argument, but they should wash their hands and so on, do netilat yadayim, and wash their mouth, and it's always best to be stringent.
Great. And I just want to look at the beginning of the Taz in Dalet here. I'll do this one, right? This is V'yesh machrim afilu bivsar achar gvina. Well, actually, I think I assigned this Taz, right? I think this was in there. So maybe I'll have someone read this. This is an important Taz. Let's see, who hasn't read recently? Andres, have you read recently? Go for it.
I can read, yeah. V'yesh machmirin afilu bivsar achar gvina. That one.
Great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's Piresh Rashi, or okay, Piresh להמתין. No.
Yeah, Pirush. Just says Pirush. Yeah, go for it.
פירוש להמתין 6 שעות ושיעור גבינה קשה שזכר רמה, היינו שעברו עליה 6 חודשים, או שהיא מתולת, מתולת כל כך, או כן כתב.
Okay, כן כתב, איסור והתר, yeah.
כן כתב, איסור והתר.
So stop there for 1 second. So, okay. So how long do you have to wait according to this between certain types of cheeses and meat?
Also 6 hours.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because the Ramah, it was like a chumrah that he threw out there, not his stam case necessarily, from the other way. And with the definition of this kind of cheese, right, gvina kasha, is it's like a 6 month, I guess I call it an aging process, maybe. I don't know enough about cheese making to say this, 6 month aging process. Or I think the best way I can is it's a moldy cheese. Is that right? That was what we call, right? Like blue cheese. Is that so the cheese people are nodding. I think people who know cheese are nodding their heads at me. So I will go with that. Good.
Well, metulat, what does metulat mean? Some people think it means actually it has worms in it. But
I feel like it just means rotten or like fermented.
Well, we'll talk about this. I think
like when there's a rind on the outside, you know.
Well, tolaim is worms.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but it can also mean like mold. I looked it up, and like if it had worms in it, why would you be able to eat it?
In Hilchot Tolaim, it says cheese with worms. You can eat the tolaim there.
Right, because they believe in in Yesh Me'ayin. In other words,
Is spontaneous generation,
Yeah.
right? So,
but I think I have a new perush or another perush, which is that maybe it means just Swiss cheese. In other words, wormholes.
oh,
We call them even in English wormholes. Wormholes in space. It's like it doesn't have to do with a worm, but it's a wormhole. I mean, I don't know. Take it or leave it. I don't have any proof for my hypothesis.
but that's interesting. I went back and forth. I just thought it meant like stinky cheeses, or moldy cheeses. But, all right, good. I'm just looking at the time. I think we should stop there with the Taz. He has a whole back and forth here, but and go on to Gimel in the Mechaber. So unless there are more, more thoughts, but I think it's important to see that Ramav, there's a custom waiting the other way. The Zohar, if I remember correctly, I'll bring it after this, but it doesn't specify a time. It makes it equal of it's just as important to wait after milk from milk to meat as meat to milk, right? That it equates those two situations. So Josh, you're nodding your head. Is that what you remember from the Zohar?
Yeah.
It's I think it says, but I remember something like Be'oto Suda.
No, it says Bota Sha'a.
Bota Sha'a. Oh, there you go. That's right.
Yeah. So, but good. Let's see. So I just had Andres. Why don't you, since that was short in the Taz, why don't you take the Mechaber?
על תבשיל של בשר מותר לאכול אחריו תבשיל של גבינה, והנטילה ביניהם אינה אלא רשות. יש מצריכין נטילה. אבל אם בא לאכול הגבינה עצמה, אחר התבשיל של בשר, או הבשר עצמו, אחר תבשיל של גבינה, חובה ליטול ידיו. So if you ate something basari and then you are going to eat a dish of gvina, then the netilat in between those is just a reshut, is just voluntarily, something like that. And then the Rama says, but there are some people that still want netila. And if you do gvina, and then if you're going to eat the cheese itself after eating the tafshil of basar, or the other way around, then it is an obligation to do the netilat.
Yeah. Great. So, all right, this is potentially a major kula on. We're going to see the Rama be machmir about this, about the tavshil versus actual basar itself, right? So. But
okay.
Good. So keep going with the Rama.
Okay. ושומן של בשר דינו כבשר עצמו. ונהגו עכשיו להחמיר שלא לאכול גבינה אחר תבשיל בשר כמו אחר בשר עצמו. ואין לשנות ולפרוץ גדר. Okay, so he says no, because the shuman of the meat is considered like meat, so therefore we have to be machmir with this, and we shouldn't eat gvina after a tafshir of basar.
So I didn't see it. Therefore, I think the Rama is making two different statements. He's saying first, the shuman of basar, don't think that's like a tafshil, like that's basar, mamash basar in terms of waiting times, and this whole thing about a tafshil of basar and then eating gvina right after, you just need to do, or maybe you don't even need to do netilat yadayim. No, we wait the full amount of time from one to the other. That's the Rama. So,
and you shouldn't change this.
Exactly. So, and by the way, I don't know anybody who. I mean, maybe I don't know. I should ask Faradim, but I don't know people who operate like the Mechaber there. But so.
What? Yeah. What is the tafshil of like?
It was like you have something that's
like
meat.
The vegetables that were cooked with the meat that they did.
Yeah, it's not the meat itself, but potentially, a meaty dish, shall we say? So, so keep going.
Mihu אם אין בשר בתבשיל, רק שנתבשל בקדרה של בשר, מותר לאכול אחריו גבינה, ואין בו מנהג להחמיר, וכן נוהגים לאכול בשר אחר תבשיל שיש בו גבינה או חלב, Okay. So, however, if you didn't eat really meat, but you just eat from a dish that was cooked in a kedera that was basari, then in that case you are allowed to eat gvina afterwards, and we don't have a minhag here to be machmir, and the same the other way around, I imagine.
Great. And I'll get to the shach in a minute about like that should be obvious based on what we're going to see later in Basar B'Chalav for Noten Tam Bar Noten Tam. So like what the chiddush here, but okay. And he says right, and yeah, and opposite as well, right? Mihu. Go.
מיהו, יש ליטול ידיו בעיניהם, ואפילו לא יאכל בשר ממש, רק תבשיל של בשר אחר תבשיל של גבינה, אם נגע בהם בידיו, אוקיי?
I keep going, but skip the parentheses, shamash, shemesh b'suda.
אוקיי, בידיו. שמש המשמש בסעודה ונוגע באוכלין, אינו צריך נטילה, דלא יצריכו נטילה רק לאוכלים.
Good.
Okay, so however, you have to do the netilat yadayim between those, even if you didn't eat really meat, but after eating a dish of gvina, if you touch the plate or the food, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But what about the shamash?
However, the shamash who was serving and touched, of course, since he was serving, he was touching the food. He doesn't need to, because this only applies for the people that are eating.
Great. So this was actually, if I remember correctly, a continuation of the Gemara on Chulin, which I didn't bring here. Which is, if you want ever one of the people have probably learned a great sugya on Netilat Yadayim in general is there in Chulin. But I wanted to, before we go on, I want to read the shach. I'll read it in Yud Tet, because the shach is important, where the Rama says, if there's no basar al tafshil, you're using a basari kedera, right, that you can immediately eat gvina after it. That should be a little bit obvious. So I'll read the shach in Yud Tet here. Mihu, imin basar v'chulei mutar, lekaman reish siman tzadi hey, yitba'er da'afil l'chlo im gvina mutar, dahavi nat bar nat. Right, noten tam bar noten tam. He says, even if you took that, if I cook something that's parv in a meat pot, right? I can even eat it with cheese potentially, at least according to the Mechaber, maybe not according to the Rama, because it's noten tam bar noten tam. It's like the degrees of separation from the meat flavor are too many to need to care about that. Venire. So when the Rama says you can eat cheese after eating something cooked in this meat dish, right? We're talking about not a very well cleaned out kedera, right? Right? So he says, no. There, we were talking in Sadi Hay, that's only if it's been, really a well washed out dish, right? There's no, meat, little taste of meat clinging to the side of the dish. And here, what the Rama is teaching us is that if I, let's say, I make basar in my pot, I clean it out, but not very well. I then cook some vegetables in it. I eat the vegetables, which may have a little bit of flavor of basar, even though the Rama is generally machmir about from tavshil to tavshil. In this case, we're mekel, all right, and then you can eat kavina right afterwards. So that's the shach, and I think that's important to try and explain what the Rama was saying there. Good. It's 3:50. Anybody had any comments on this? As we're kind of okay with that. Let's finish it up. let's see. Noam, you want to take Dalit in the Mechaber?
Sure thing. Mi she'achal gvina v'rotzeh le'achol basar, sarich leva'er me'al hashulchan, shirei pa she'achal im hagvina, ve'asur le'achol gvina al mapa she'achlo ba'basar, v'nafach asur. V'chol sheken, I'll stop there. Okay, so one who wants to eat cheese, one who ate cheese and then wants to eat meat needs to clear from the table all of the leftover bread that was eaten with the cheese. And it's forbidden to eat cheese on a tablecloth upon which meat was eaten, and also the opposite of forbidden. וכל שכן שאסור לחתוך גבינה, אפילו צוננת בסכין שרגילים לחתוך בשר. And furthermore, and all the more so, it's forbidden to cut cheese even when it's cold with a knife that you would usually cut meat with. ולא עוד, אלא אפילו הפת שאוכלים עם הגבינה, אסור לחתוך בסכין שחותכים בבשר. And furthermore, even bread that you eat with cheese, it's forbidden to eat with it. It's forbidden to cut it with a knife that is used to cut meat.
Great, and we'll see this later on too, not today, but that knives may have special rules in terms of what they do in terms of flavor. Maybe it's flavor transfer, whatever it is, of mixing between milk and meat. But
well,
good.
Knives, this is a big question. Are knives considered dirty? And the stam knife is dirty. So therefore, if you cut the bread with it, there's going to be actual shemen of the meat on the bread.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's right, Rav Nachum. I think there's two ways that it gets looked at. One is that knives are just considered dirty, and the other is that knives, when they cut, the sharpness somehow exudes flavor to it potentially. Which
that's also true, but that would only be with sharp food, not bread.
Well, I think there's some Achronim who think that it's not just about curry foods, right? That there might be. I don't remember. When we get there, we'll take a look. Maybe I'm wrong. So
sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And also the strength of the knife, not just the sharpness.
Right.
Of the cutting, strength of the cutting.
Okay, so it's be when we get to that Siman, we'll see. But good. So that you need a different, if you're going to cut a piece of bread to use with your milk meal, you should cut it with your milchik or potentially parv knife, and not with your. Right? There's no parv implements. There's no parv dishes here. Everything's meat or milk. So, all right, take us away with the Haggah, Noam, and then we'll close up.
V'chen lehefech nami asor. Okay, and also the opposite is forbidden in terms of switching the knife for the breads. Mihu ayedei ni'itza bekarka kashe shari. However, if you first take the knife and you stab it into the ground, then it's permitted. Aval kfar nahagu kol Yisrael liot lahem shnei sakinim l'rishon echad mehem shia lo heker v'nahagu l'rishon shel chalav ve'en l'shanot minhag shel Yisrael. But it's already become a custom among Israel to have two knives and to mark one of them so that there'll be a differentiation between the two. And it's the custom to mark the dairy knife, and you should not change a custom of Israel.
Great. This is anybody who marks all their silverware and their knives and their plates, right? It's right here in the Ramah. That's what we do. And here he's talking about knives in particular. And it is interesting. The ni'itza piece here, which might be, as Rav Nachum pointed out, knives are generally knives are dirty. If you shove them in the ground, it cleans off the knife. It's a way to clean it. The Shach actually thinks that lechatchila you can just do that, that even though the minhag has become to have different knives. So
wait, two things I want to say. One is in the army, they actually punch a hole in the milchik knives. In other words, they follow this halacha. Dafka, you mark only the milchik ones. The fleshik ones are the regular ones, and they punch holes in the milchik ones. So anything with a hole is milk. The second thing I want to say is that my grandmother, Aleha Shalom, she has somehow got this old custom or misunderstanding of this halacha, and she thought that if you treif a knife up, or you just stick it into the ground. And I remember telling me, go to the backyard and stick this knife in the ground. So not as here it's a prophylactic. It's like before things happen, you you clean the knife, and then it becomes like hard. But she thought if you like trafed up something, you trafed up a knife. Although I don't know how you trafe up. It's hard to trafe up a knife.
I do remember seeing something like this in Hechsher Kalim in Orach Chaim, that before you kosher a knife that you do.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
that would make sense because you have to clean it. It's really just a cleaning process. It's not a koshering process.
So, good. It's a lot of stuff on separating milk and meat, between meals. Any final thoughts before we?
Well, I wanted to say one more thing that I did look up just now, some sources for 5 hours, and there are sources, but they're more later sources, like Rav Eliashiv says that the Ikar Adin, it was a pretty big, posek, says that the Ikar Adin, it's 5 hours in Mashu, like Joel was saying.
Yeah, but I can tell you, it's interesting. I am glad you looked. I can tell you that at his house, he didn't do that. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
his house was 6 hours.
It was 6 full hours for them.
Yeah, well, he says it's a chumrah. He says you should be machmir, but the Ikar Adin is actually 5 hours and a little bit more. He says that's, and also Yabia Omer brings it as an opinion also.
Okay.
So it is brought in the most recent Achroni.
Yeshkach.
Ruchim to you. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you,
Thank
Joel.
you.
Happy
Wednesday
Lag
for
BaOmer.
you.
Excellent job. Amazing.
Thank you.